how does that make you feel when people that you look up to in your work, then all of a sudden are kind of looking up to you or looking at you as an equal?
When your peers, point at you and say you did a good job, like that feels really good. When people I don't know say something's amazing, I'm like, thank you. I'm very grateful. But when your peers say that, or people you respect, your friends, like say that what you've done means something to them, or that, they're interested in what you're doing, like that definitely feels very, I don't know if it's like validating, but it feels like it, the effort that you put into things means something, it like connected or resonated in some way. And when people say that they see you in it, or they see that the work, they see the effort, not the output of it, but they know what goes into it, then it really like feels like, man, okay, I felt like the time I'm using on these certain things means something. It has some value, not just to me, because I'm always thinking like, I have a certain amount of time, how am I using it? Sometimes I'm wasting it like endlessly, and other times I feel like I didn't waste it. And I always tell people, like with work, some of these jobs, they don't make a lot of sense when you get them, but later on it will, and they'll be fulfilling. That was one of those things I showed in LA. It's kind of came to be really special. And when someone else says, yeah, I see why, like that's cool. Like it does feel, it felt good. It doesn't happen very often, at least for me. And it definitely is motivating to sort of say, okay, what do I want to pursue? Like if I kind of feel like I know when things are clicking, then how do I make that happen again? I feel like a lot of my career has sort of happened kind of by accident. One job leads to the other. We always say that. And it's like, if you've gotten this far by accident, like, what if you decided you wanted to do something? How far could you get then? Like, and the fear is not so much failing, because I don't think we'll let ourselves fail. And we know if we do, like, it's just like a bump, and it's an up and down, it's not like a turn off. And so for me, it's sort of like, well, maybe you're just afraid of like what would happen if you do put your mind to something, but then I think back to like this thing in LA, and it's like, I didn't really want to go, because I was nervous.
What just for people that don't know, what was the thing in LA?
So Cinegear is a gear expo in the film industry, where people go out and they look at equipment and they test things, and all the brands and all the vendors are out there showing off all their stuff. And it's, people that are buying gear and are interested in buying gear, or maybe have a rental house, they might be out there looking at things and whatever. Everything's crazy expensive. None of it's for sale there. So you're just like browsing, it's like going to a store and browsing. But Cinegear in LA is very fun because it's outside. It's on the Warner Brothers lot, which is super cool. And you're getting to kind of be in some of the stages, but it's just filled with gear. I'm not buying
Anyone
gear.
can go, or do you have to be invited?
No, you can just buy tickets and go. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a ticketed event.
Yeah,
okay.
you just pay a thing. And so it's free though. Like it's free up until a certain 2 weeks before. Then it costs like $10 or something. But it's I think if it's a good way to see all the stuff, there's arms that go on cars, and there's all the lighting. And so if you're looking at a new camera, you can put your hands on it, and then you can decide you want to buy it and stuff, and so it is cool. I went because I was invited to speak at a event on the Sunday about Steadicam and how the shot was made. And I said, well, I don't really have like these complicated shots in feature films that, had all this choreography or crane step-offs and all this crazy stuff. But I have this documentary piece that I just talked about at a workshop. And I'd be happy to talk about my work in documentary and why I think it's important and how the Steadicam fits into it. And this one documentary I did was all Steadicam. It's 8 minutes long. And they were like, great, show that. So I show up to show that, and there's another guy there named Neil, who's a little younger than me, who's done some incredible stuff. And I know Neil through other people, and and then there's like these two other guys who've shot like all the biggest movies in the world over the past 15 or 20 years. And I was like, man, I don't think I'm qualified to sit up there with these guys, number one. So I was kind of kicking rocks about going, and dragging my feet. And I almost was like, I just don't want to go, because I didn't, and I sent the piece to a couple of my friends and I said, hey, you've seen this thing and you've heard me talk about this piece. I don't want to go out to LA in a place that's known for Hollywood movies and sit up on a stage with a bunch of people in the movies and disappoint the audience with my documentary, because I didn't know what the expectation was. And they were like, absolutely not. It's unique. Your experience was unique. You're good at talking about it. Just go do it. And I was like, okay, fine. I'll do it. I trust that. I asked them, so I have to take their advice. I can't ask them and then just go do my thing. That seems like a waste of their time. So I said, fine. Still kicked rocks all the way there. Got out there and, did my talk. And, it was moving for people. And I think it was interesting for people. And a lot of people came up after and were asking me questions about it. And
what's the elevator pitch on the doc? What's the general?
It was the documentary's a piece by a guy named Schwartz, who's from, I think, New Orleans, and came to do a documentary about Baltimore and the food deserts up there. But it really ended up being a documentary about kind of, resilience and poverty through these eyes of these three kids. And it was just a 9-minute piece, but it
moved a lot of people, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's a very moving, atmospheric, interesting piece. And we shot it really kind of all in one take. We didn't rehearse anything or anything. It was he very much felt like if we're making a doc, we're going to shoot this once and that's it. Well, in Steadicam, that's nerve wracking, because you don't know what's going to happen. And he's kind of directing me around with a headset, which is unusual, but worked very well for that piece. So it's a cool piece, and it did well. And I think, it was a very moving experience for all of us that were there making it. There wasn't very many of us. And I think in the Steadicam world, it's very unique. I mean, it looks unique in its own, but I think, when you look at it, I don't really see myself in it, and I don't, and I think that's good. So talking about that, with people, it was interesting. And what I found was, when I talk about documentaries and stuff and the work I'm doing, there's a lot of people out there that want to do that stuff, and so I kind of said, well, if I go to LA and one person, it resonates with one person in the audience, then it's worthwhile, because that's it, So I was like, well, that's cool. That'll be my aim, and it ended up being really worthwhile, because even the guys that were on stage with me were extremely complimentary of it, and, were moved by the piece and, continued to talk about it after, which I was like, man, that's cool. It felt just felt good that you did something that, people you really respect also found it valuable, which is cool. I don't think there's much above that,
Yeah, true validation, right? Because we always, you make this documentary and you think it's great, and maybe that's all that matters. But then there's also, the outside world. It's does anyone actually care about this, right?
And there's a thing of is the piece good? Did the piece move people? Yes. And then the people that know what you did to make that happen, patting you on the back for what you did in your work as an individual, you're my contribution to that piece. It wasn't all me. I mean, they could have turned out a piece of junk after it, but they made something magical. And so, when people that know recognize what went into it, it's if you're, a triathlete and you run this race and, finish it, and people congratulate you, that's cool. But if another triathlete comes up and says, hey, that was really impressive and that was cool, they know what you did, it sort of feels all right, it's a little bit of a different meaning. It doesn't say it's any less valuable, it's just different, so that's kind of what happened there, and that's cool. And it's not that I haven't had it from people before for certain things, but it's random, I remember when I went to Alaska and I did this big shoot up in Alaska, I climbed this mountain, I chased these guys in this marathon up this mountain. I was all over the place and kayaking, and we were doing all this really cool adventure stuff. Came back home and I was shooting an HGTV show in DC. and not super interested in it. And it wasn't very exciting to me. And I go to this party and I'm telling this story. People are asking me what I did. And I was like, oh, I did Alaska. And everybody's kind of like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. And then they're like, what are you doing now? And I told them about this HGTV show, and they're calling all their friends over because they all watch HGTV and they know this show and they're like so fascinated by it. And I'm like, man, that's what you're interested in, not like the stuff so it's just, it meant something. It was just random, that they're find something valuable that I don't, but it still was like nice for them to be like, oh, you shot that show? And I'm like, yeah, like not something I was proud of, but they loved it. So I don't know. It seems like it means something to somebody. Yeah. But when your peers pat you on the back, it's always cool.
Just to kind of make a pivot here. When did you become a father? How long ago was
2013.
Yeah.
Didn't really want to so I was with a woman and we got married. Well, when I met her, she was like, didn't even really want to date. And I think I did, but I was kind of like, well, why don't you want to? You seem like you really like me. And so we went through back and forth a little bit, and it was like off and on. And then she was like, well, I don't ever want to get married. And I was like, okay, we don't have to get married. And then we got married, and she was like, well, I don't want to have kids. And I was like, okay. And then all of a sudden she did want to have kids. And I was kind of like, well, I don't know if I want to have kids because this relationship seems a bit back and forth. And if we have a kid, then, and it was all this fear of like stuff all the time of like, well, what if we do have a kid, we don't have a kid? And, I had sort of moved out for a little bit and moved back in. And we had just been like, had this sort of off and on relationship where we really, like, I think I was like determined to make it work. And maybe in her way she was too, but it definitely seemed to me like I was working on it, or at least maybe I was just more forcing myself to work on it internally and stay there, even though sometimes I didn't want to. So then I realized I was just not having a kid because I was afraid of all these things. I was like, I don't think that's a good reason to deny her who really wants one out of my own fear. That just seems very selfish. And you know what, let's just do it. And I remember when I came to that realization, I was like, oh, that's something. Like I got over this little hump. Like it was the first time I really realized this little thing I had. And I don't think I put a pin on it or anything, but I definitely realized like, oh, I just got over something. And it was this big event that I was committing to, but I got over this like dumb fear that I realized it was holding me back. And I started to think like, oh, that's interesting. And then we had Otto in 2013, and it was great. I mean, it was life-changing from feeling like my life had greater purpose than just the minutia I was sort of pursuing at the time,
Yeah.
It sort of seemed like, oh, like I have this person who needs me and depends on me that I want to take care of, and I just want to watch and hang out. And it sort of just gave every day like a better reason to get up that seemed way less like materialistic and selfish. It seemed like, oh, now I have like, who am I, like, what am I going to do to like, help him, become something. Like, yeah. I don't, not help him be me, but just help him be whoever he is,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so, I think it's the greatest show on earth. That's what I like to call it.
Yeah.
Just like watching a kid grow, your kid that you've seen from day one.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it's ever going to really end.
No, and I was excited about it, and I didn't find it very, challenging. I mean, I think it was challenging. I watched, it was hard for my ex at the time, like being, she was doing a lot of the work.
Let's pause for a second. Oh, yeah. So you have the kid.
Mm-hmm.
Relationship is up in the air.
When we had Otto, the relationship was good. I think then it was good. Yeah. I mean, I think I remember those first 6 months home, I was kind of like, oh, this is cool. Like, we're kind of like on track, Things seemed to be like at a pace that was sort of consistent. But I was home. Once I went back to work, then things started to get less consistent, and so it just kind of emotionally, I think, was challenging for her and me. And I think, when things got challenging, we just sort of instead of sort of saying, hey, like, I'm going through something, are you going through something? It always felt to me like her and I, for some reason, when we didn't get along, it was like you versus me, you know? And I was like, it's not you versus me. Like, I'm also dealing with stuff too, you know, stress and whatever, but it just definitely became like this. I always said, I was like, it feels like why are we like, we're not in competition, you know? And so that just never changed. And I remember thinking, okay, we have Otto. If I'm 40 and this hasn't changed, I have to change it, because it's just never going to change. And that's what happened, you know?
I've heard stories about when couples split, you know, unfortunately the parents can sometimes talk badly about the parent they're broken up with. Mm-hmm. Did you ever find yourself doing that, or did
No, quite the opposite. Like, I don't talk bad about very many people, if any. I think I just don't. Definitely not with Otto. You know, if
I think that's really important for people to know. Like, if you do split up, not to influence your child's opinion and say all these negative things about how terrible your ex is, right? I think there's a lot of resentment and hatred that people can maybe build up over time, and they just I don't know. I don't have that. I mean, I definitely am disappointed that, you know, we couldn't work it out, and, you know, we were younger and couldn't get out of our way, or we were too selfish, or whatever it was. That sort of, I know what it was for me, and so I don't know what it was for her, but it just didn't work out. And I'm okay with that. It's like, great. So we're not married, but we're still human beings. I still appreciate her. I like who she is, you know, as a human being. I like, you know, there's things that she does that I don't agree with and I don't like, and that's okay too. Like, I can accept that, and not, why do I have to be mad about it? You know, like, I don't think it's fair to anybody to be, well, I'm happy when you do things I like, and I'm mad at you when you do things I don't like. It's like, just be okay with it all, you know, like, it can't be one way. I don't think, you know, and so it's okay. I just have this thing. It's like, you can hold two truths, right? I can like something about you and not like something about you. And I had this conversation with Otto, because he said, his mom said to me, Otto's not really liking this kid at school right now, who Otto was pretty close with. And I was like, man, that sounds terrible. And so I talked to Otto about it, and I said, Mom said this thing. Tell me about that. And he said, well, you know, he's doing this and he's not playing fair and this and that. And I said, okay. I said, so he's doing a bunch of stuff you don't agree with? And he was like, yes. And I said, okay, well, don't mix that up with the fact that you don't like him. I said, you still like him. You just don't like things he's doing right now. And I said, and you don't know why he's doing those things. Maybe he wants some more attention. Maybe he's feeling like the competition's ramped up in sports, or maybe, you know, he's, you know, annoyed at his brother or something like that. I said, but it's not about whether you like him. It's just okay to not like some things he's doing and not agree with things he's doing. But don't mix it up with like friendship or anything like that. I said, that's like an error of our existence sometimes, to me. I didn't tell him this, but to me, it's like, people so quickly don't like something somebody does, so they don't like that person, you know? And I just think that's just so unproductive. And I don't think it's healthy for the person doing it, you know, because you're sort of like creating all this, you know, you're walking around with a sword out. You know, if you do something I don't like, I don't like you now, and you're just pointing all this stuff. And it's like, man, just like, I don't agree how somebody cut me off in traffic today. It's just like, whoa, I don't know what's going on. Like, yeah, no,
they may none of it's intentional.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I feel like it would help a lot if we could maybe see the positives in what we like in people, and not to say that we need to be best friends with them, or not to say that we have to agree with everything. But yeah, like you said, don't look at the negatives of what everyone is doing that you don't like, right?
Yeah, and don't turn it into more than you just don't agree with it. Like, just leave it at that. Like, it doesn't have to go. I mean, look, not in all situations. I mean, in horrific situations with, you know, matters of race to war and you know, and stuff like that, it's different. But I think I'm just thinking more on the sort of day-to-day things that we deal with, you know, between each other. Even when it comes to filmmaking and stuff like that, it's like, we're so quick to just not work with somebody, you know, or, not, because we don't agree with them or whatever, to sort of, flip a switch that's negative. And I just think it's kind of a waste of time, because I don't think it's productive, and I don't think it's functional. I don't think you can just say you don't like somebody and then walk away and just never have to deal with that person again. And if you do that, build that habit, then you're just doing that everywhere, and it's just not, it just makes life not that fun. It's just you're managing this stuff all the time. And I think it's just nice to be like, hey, like, I don't agree with how mom's handling the schedule right now either, but, mom's got an opinion that she wants too. So how do we find some middle ground that works for both of us?
Yeah. What have you found the most difficulty in raising your son? Like, what's the hardest thing? Have you ever been stumped where he's bringing a problem or issue and you're like, oh man, how do I answer this one?
No, I haven't had that. I always try to have an answer for him. The hardest thing is when he acts like me. When he does something that I see myself in, and I'm like, I don't, okay, you're doing something that clearly is something. Do
you have an example?
That I do, yeah. So we had some friends over, and their dog was running around, and their dog chewed up his soccer ball. And Otto loves soccer more than anything right now. And I think his perfect soccer ball that he's been playing with got some damage to it, but it was still totally usable. It just was not the same soccer ball anymore after this dog got a hold of it. And so I said, hey, he was upset and he didn't want to talk about it, whatever. And so then the next day he was showing me why it doesn't work as well, and why if he juggles it, it's like not as good. And so I said, well, I think I've seen a lot of people in different countries and in different places with way worse soccer balls than that doing amazing things. And I was like, I think if you get good with this soccer ball that's not functioning properly, you'll be really good with every soccer ball. I don't think he really agreed with that. And so I said, hey, use it for a couple days. And if you want to get a new soccer ball, I don't think you need one. However, if you want to get a new one, I get it. I'll split the cost of it with you. So you got to kick in $20, I'll kick in $20, and we'll go get it. So he used it for a couple days, and then he kind of let it go. And then the other day he was like down and out, And I was like, what's going on? What's going on? And, I was like, well, I got to go get something from the store. Do you want to go? No. And then he was like, oh, yeah. Let me go. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And so he gets in the car and he's not talking. And I'm like, what's the matter? You're not feeling good, this, that, whatever, And I was like, did you decide on the soccer ball? And he didn't answer. And so now I'm like, okay, this is the thing. So I said, hey, would you like to go and look for a new soccer ball while we're out? And I was like, we said we would if you want one. I said, I'm good with that. And I said, and I don't need to restate my feelings on it. It's up to you. This is your thing. And he was like, yes. And so then I said, has this been bothering you for a couple of days? And he was like, yeah, and I said, oh, and I asked, how come he hasn't talked about it? And he didn't really have a response. And I said, well, have you just been thinking about it and trying to make a decision? And he was like, yeah, I guess so, And so it's just sort of like this trying to the hard thing is just understanding how to give them the space to figure things out on their own, but not leave them hanging and abandoned, and being able to guide without influencing his decision, and sort of navigating that thing. I just try to do as mindfully and as carefully as I can, for everybody, but specifically for him. He gets the most effort, I think. I put effort in with everybody for that, but definitely with him, that's my thing. And it's the hardest thing when they're upset, to be like, when he was a baby, he's hungry, he wants to be held, like his diaper's dirty. It's like a process of elimination. And the older we get, the more complicated it is. And I think when you get to be an adult, it's extremely complicated, especially when the self becomes a thing. He hasn't got, right now, it's, exterior things that could upset him. But as soon as he becomes aware of him and his own insecurities and all that, now there's that thing. So as adults, it's like, well, now the process of elimination is like a long list of things. What could it be? And some of those things intermingle and all that. So it's just, I feel like, just being careful about how we approach all that stuff when people are going through something is like, it's challenging.
But I would imagine, at least the way I'm thinking of it, I mean, my daughter's only 3.5, right? 8 or 9 years behind you, but I can already see the independence. She's already telling me to leave her room. She's like, give me space, all those type of things. So 20 years from now, though, I still want to be a part of her life, of course, like every parent. But I don't want to force myself into her life. Like, I just want her to invite me over. So I guess that's the question, is like, how do we stay connected to our kids as they disconnect from us? It sounds like you're doing a pretty good job, man.
Thank you. I mean, I don't know what kind of job I'm doing. I just know that, I don't know anything. Like, my instincts tell me to, be there for him. And, I'm not building the strategy that I want him to be a certain way when he's 20. That I'm not doing. I don't think I can control that at all. And so me trying to control that will probably ensure that he does not want to hang out with me when he's 20. And so my approach is, what does he need? Meet him where he is right now. I learn a lot from where he is about myself. I find it fascinating that I drop him off at school one day and he gives me a hug, and then the next day he's like, all right, I'll see you. And I'm like, no hug? And he goes, no. Okay. I go, hey, you want to hug behind the bushes so your buddies don't see? And he like laughs, and I'm like, all right, I'll see you later, So it's like acknowledging that what he wants is okay. And it may not be what I want, and that's fine too. But this is not about living I don't want him living his life under what I think his life should be. I want him to live his life the way he wants to live it, but I want him to be smart about it. I want him to have the tools to do so. And I want to be able to like kind of say, hey, I went through this thing. Here's what I saw. Take it or leave it. I don't even think he needs that. I think he just needs to look and see us there and be like, cool. Like, you're there. You're not gone anywhere. You're here. Like, you haven't, there's a part of me that's resonating inside all the time that's saying, don't do anything, just be there. And for anybody, whether it's on set or it's with Otto, it's like, just be there for them. Like, that's your best thing you can do. When they need something, help them. And when they don't know, like, maybe try to inform them a little bit, give them some insight, or just give them some confidence boost, push them, into the discomfort thing, but they'll go there because they trust you and they know that you're there, right? And they know that if they go and it doesn't work out, it's okay too. And then, what I try to teach Otto on is that there are certain values that are important, which are, just because you disagree with your friend doesn't mean you don't like your friend, right? Like, don't screw that up. I don't want you to screw that up, because that's a very common thing. Just because mom and I aren't together and we were married and now we're unmarried doesn't mean we don't like each other, at least in my opinion. I don't know what parenting is. I've only seen it through my parents and watched other people, but not closely. To me, parenting is not about, it's about love, but it's about being there for them when, at different situations, which, it's like, okay, I can't show up the same every day and do the same thing every day, because they don't need the same things every day. But if I show up every day and do the same stuff, like, eventually it's going to be irrelevant because they've changed. And then I think also, so it's like I'm constantly evolving towards what he needs, and I'm not surprised when he needs something completely different than he did yesterday, because that's what has been his whole life. You have a baby, at 3 months, they need something different at 6 months. So you're just like this evolving thing, which is awesome. I mean, it's really fun. And forcing me to evolve along with him. And I learn a lot by what he's going through, because I realize, like, man, he's going through something I went through, but he's doing it better. You know, or he went through this thing, it didn't seem to bother him at all. And that thing like rocked my world when I was younger, you know? But I don't think any strategy I apply to Otto is going to work out, right? Like, I don't think if I would say, like, I want Otto to be this way when he's 15 or whatever, it's just like, if I want him to be a certain way, then I need to be that way. And so if I'm that way, hopefully that'll rub off on him, because I spend a lot of time with him and he watches me pretty closely, and he'll ride his bike, and when my hand's off the handlebars, I look over and his is off, and I catch him. Look, you know, he's always watching. And I think, you know, if he's surrounded by good people, then he'll be good. If he's surrounded by, you know, somebody who's being racist, unless someone's telling him that's wrong, like my dad was, which was good, you know, then you know, he may end up that way. So it's like, you know, we are their environment. You know, we're a product of our environment, and our family is our environment most of the time. And I think if we create a good, healthy environment, why would you not want to come back to that habitat when you're older? You know what I mean? So it's just like, create a good vibe. Like, if they want to be alone, let them be alone. Like, they're just figuring something out. I have plenty of times I want to be alone too, and I can't be. So I'm just like, be alone, like, do your thing. I selfishly want to be in here, and I'll tell him that. Oh, you're doing this thing? Can I be in here while you do that? I just want to be here with you. And he's like, sure. I'm like, okay. You know, it's like, if I let it, it's just for me, you know? So, and if I tell him, like, hey, I'm making dinner, will you help me? And he was like, I don't want to. And I'm like, okay. I said, I'd like you to just be in here. Like, can you do whatever you're doing while you're with me so we can spend time together? And he's like, no, I just want to go read in my room. Like, okay, cool. Like, that's fine, because I know this is more about a me thing than him, you know? But at least I've told him what I want.
Yeah,
you know?
That's awesome, man. That's really interesting. It feels like you're very, you're very vulnerable and honest and open with your kid. And so hopefully then he'll reciprocate that vulnerability, and when he needs you, he'll reach out to you.
Yeah, I think it's just trying to, you know, create an environment where there's no walls. You know, there's not a lot of like wondering what's happening or wondering what somebody else is thinking. And when they have that moment where you don't know what they're thinking, like giving them the space, but not feeling like, hey, when you're ready to talk, you will be heard. And I'm not going to impose my will on top of whatever you might have going on, whether I agree with it or not. Because there's plenty of things that he wants to do sometimes I don't agree with, but I'm like...
Yeah, how do you deal with that?
I told this, some friends of his were over, and ours, they were over, and they have 2 daughters. One's Otto's age, and one's older. And one is in 10th grade and thinking about having a boyfriend, and her parents are like, no, we don't want to do that yet. Like, we're going to wait until you start dating and all this. So we were talking about it. And so somebody said something about... was like kind of pushed the conversation into a different direction. It was like very light, and then it got a little serious. And somebody asked me what I thought, and I just said, hey, right now you're like in dance, and you're playing sports, and you're running for the student president, and you're doing all this really amazing stuff. I was like, and you love it, right? And I said, that's cool. When you get a boyfriend, all that will fall away, because that person will become your entire focus. And I was like, so just when you're willing, just know that you either have to manage that and balance it out, or you're just inevitably, like, once you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend in high school, it just becomes your whole world sometimes. And a lot of the things and activities you do and stuff will become about that more than it'll become about the other thing. And I said, so that would be my only thing. It's like, make sure you are aware that once you start dating somebody in 11th grade, kind of becomes your whole world, and it can definitely take over and impact everything. I was like, it's not a bad thing. It's just, it is a real thing sometimes. And so, you know, just be aware. Like, that was my only thing, you know. I was like, I just felt like, you know, at that age, even as adults, you know, it's like you get in a relationship, and it's like, it can take over, you know. It can become your sole focus. It can also like take over your identity sometimes. You know, there's definitely people that kind of lose their identity to the couple. which isn't, maybe great for some people. I just think not for everybody, but sometimes it happens, you don't even know. And you look up in 10 years and you're like, I've just been doing the same thing.
Do you ever have these conversations now with people, like, let's say friends or acquaintances, or, Otto's friends' parents are like, what do you do? Because I have conversations where they're like, now that I've been working for the Ravens for a couple of years, they just think I'm like, I just do sound for the Ravens all the time. I'm like, well, and 50 other clients. It's just that people don't understand. They're like, well, how do you get the work? And I'm like, well, it's kind of like a big grapevine, a big network of people, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, it's really hard to understand it until you see it, right?
Yeah. And I think not as much anymore. There was a period of time where I did, but now everybody's a filmmaker and a photographer. There was this period of time before the iPhone where if you were a photographer, you were pretty special, because not many people did that. And you had to have certain gear, and there's a certain access thing and all that stuff. And now, like, a lot of people that could then take great pictures have access to take great pictures and have somewhere to put them. Back then, if you were a photographer, no one really knew who you were unless you were in a magazine or whatever. But this is an evolving thing. Like, I'm changing my style or my approach every shoot, I'm always, it's never the same. And so there's this element of like, I'm doing something slightly different. I'm approaching this with like a different attitude. What's my attitude towards this shoot versus what's my attitude towards that shoot? What are they going to ask me to do that I haven't been asked to do before? Stuff like that. So there is this like a little bit of like, I think, anxiety or tension going in all the time that I think is good, because if I'm bored, then I'm not interested.
Right. And that's what keeps it interesting, is that you're working with different people, different locations, and different expectations all the time, right?
Yeah, that does keep it interesting, but I think sometimes that's not the case. So then it's up to me to make it interesting. Like, I have to do work in order to be engaged sometimes. Like, sometimes it's like I'm shooting a commercial that I don't really know much about the brand. I know enough, I know what they want. And, it's not like I'm passionate about this story we're telling. I have to be like, I'm interested in the lighting. I'm interested in the movement. What am I going to be interested in that's going to click in and make me engaged in certain things? Documentaries and stuff are different for me because I'm usually extremely invested in the subject. Commercials, the subject is fake. The subject's a product. So it's like, what am I engaged in this one? Like, what lane am I putting myself in to be interested? Oh, it's lighting, or it's composition, or it's the styling. Sometimes it's just like, none of this is that hard or complicated for me. So like, I just want everybody to have a good time on set. I want to be of service to everybody. So what can I do to make this easy on the crew? How, like, my win will be when we get out early, and I really like that challenge. So it's like kind of trying to find the thing, that I'm trying to work on that shoot. And sometimes it's just like, I'll do a bunch of lighting plots and give them to everybody. And then we'll try to, not telling them that I'm trying to get done early, just to like see if it makes a difference, and then, it did. Oh, cool.
Do you sound like you have the mentality of a director when you say like, I'm trying to be here for all the crew, make sure everything goes well, and we get out early, right?
Yeah.
So that's more than just a cinematographer, which is your main thing right now, right? Are you transitioning into directing, or where do you see your career going?
I love operating the camera. So Steadicam and camera operating, I love to do. I love lighting, but I feel like lighting has become, minimized in a lot of these jobs for resources or speed or something. And the gaffers here are so good that they're almost DPs. Like the gaffers I work with are so good at their jobs that it's almost like I can tell them what I want and then they can do it. And so now it leaves me time to do something else. I have been directing probably since 2012. Like, I started directing like TV series type stuff, like reality and doc type shows, and some short docs and stuff like that over time. I've directed. Last year I got a call to direct some commercials. And I was like, oh, that's how you see. I didn't ever picture. I don't know how people see me. I don't even know if people know me. So I was shocked when someone called me to direct a commercial, in a way, because I didn't know that anybody saw me like that.
To be honest, you said since 2012. I didn't know you. I mean, every time I see you, you're behind the camera, right?
Yeah, so that's traditionally where it's been, and I like that part. So I'll seek those out. But I do like directing when it comes to storytelling and working with people. Like I really like trying to get people to feel comfortable on camera and be in the role and sort of own it, you know, and understand that like you're here, whether it's a commercial or not, not because you look a certain way. Some people put them in there because they look a certain way. I really say like, your attitude, your look, like everything about you is this person. So you are this thing. So what would you do if this was you, you know? And so even if it's a commercial, but especially if it's a documentary, like, you know, trying to unfold somebody's story and help them through it is really interesting, you know, because it is my take on it, which hopefully is valuable to them, but I really want them to feel like I connect and have unfolded my story in a way that I don't think I really understood, and now I do. You know, a lot of times these documentaries, people will have their own experience as a subject going through it and come out on the other side somewhat transformed just through the filmmaking experience. You know, some documentaries are very fly on the wall, and you're in and you're out, but a lot of them, you know, the people that are in them and the people making them go through some experience together. That to me is like...
Is that your favorite work, documentaries?
Yeah, I mean, I think documentaries are narrative in nature anyway. You know, you have this responsibility to help capture and tell somebody's story. And, you know, hopefully you get to apply all your skills, your talent with lighting or whatever it might be, or camera movement, to help bring it to life in a way that they feel comfortable and, you know, proud that they've told it, and empowered by the fact that it's hopefully going to, you know, spark interest in somebody or inspire somebody or cause somebody to sort of go out and take some action or do something or, you know, teach somebody something. So that's the thing I'm looking for. I learned so much by following around somebody or spending time with people that I really feel like the camera and all that is sort of second to my own interest to be there. You know, like I'm interested, I want to be there. And so I'm having this experience and I'm taking the camera with me because we have to come out with something on the other side that we said we were going to do. But it's like an extension, you know. And so I find that experience is very fulfilling as a filmmaker, you know. I also find it fascinating to walk onto a huge set with my Steadicam and stand there and be like, what do you need me to do? And they say, we need you to go from A to B to C. Follow that person. This is the headroom. This is the framing. This is what happened. This is the timing, you know, whatever. And I'm like, cool, different game, you know, much easier game in a way, but a different game and a really fun game to be kind of a tool that you're kind of like a link on the chain. You know.
What about, just to kind of make a pivot here, what about personally with, are you dating someone or
married?
You're remarried?
Remarried, yep.
What have you learned from your first marriage into your second?
I mean, tons of things. I think, no, we don't ever get to those points, you know, anymore. I think it's a totally different thing.
I mean, different people, right? You guys just
it's like a
dynamic.
different business, you know. It's like a, you know, we had, you know, a camping company and now we have a donut shop. It's like, you know, it's like requires completely different things of me. But what I did learn is, you know, it's better for me to, you know, clearly communicate things up front. And I told Lindsay that when we started going out and whatever and talking more on the phone. It was long distance, so it was a lot of talking. It was really stressful. There was a lot of question, a lot of like, do we really, like, is this working out? Trust things, like all the stuff when you're not with each other every day. And so, you know, all the insecurities are on the table when you're far away in a way. And so I very much was like, we just have to be honest with each other and we have to clearly communicate our thing. And it took a while for us to both be able to do that, but now we do that really quickly and it's nice. And we don't get mad at each other about it. You know, it's like okay for her to feel a certain way about something and me not to, you know. We have this joke that she gets frustrated with things I do, and so then she acts frustrated, you know. And I get frustrated with things she do and I just tell her about it, you know. And so it's always like the acting of the frustration sometimes can just be what the argument is about, you know? Whereas if you just say like, that was annoying, you know, it's like, oh, okay. But if you're like, I'm annoyed, I'm going to walk around and demonstrate to you, it becomes a thing, you know? And so we're always like doing that stuff. But yeah, it's great. I mean, we're both super happy. And I think, you know, just trying to make progress in something that we're deciding on, you know? Whereas I think for me, it's like, I felt like I had to start all over. And so I feel like I'm just starting over.
Yeah, man, thanks for coming over,
Sure.
sharing all your
Fun.
thoughts. I always love our conversations on set, so now we can officially do it.
Yeah.
Do it in this little studio.
Yeah, it's good. I'm glad
So-
you're doing this. I think it's cool. I'm excited to listen to the other ones and see, like, I'm interested to see where you become the storyteller in this. You know what I mean? I think that it'll happen over time.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm really following you into the things, you know? So that'll be fun. And I think, you know, as you dive into more people and stuff, it's like, you'll learn stuff, but then you're going to be like, you're going to really want to go deep in the stuff, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
well, until next time, we can always do it again. But
sure.
Thanks, man.
Sweet. Yeah, thank you. It's fun.